At the beginning of the Middle Ages, there are three central areas of Europe that eventually are going to try and lay claim to the idea that they are the true inheritors of the Roman Empire's tradition. The first one we looked at was Byzantium, which has the continuity of being a part of the old empire, using, of course, Greek and Latin, and in many ways seeing itself simply as the continuation of the empire when the western part had fallen. And of course, Justinian had tried to reunite both East and West. Next, we'll take a look at the rise of Islam and the rise of a different tradition that's on the edge of the old Roman Empire, but nonetheless is going to be claiming to be a successor. And this is where we're going to start now. Now, in the context of the European view of the empire, remember, Italy was essentially the focus of the first part of the Roman Republic and Empire, and then things kind of spread out from there. The periphery, the sort of edge of the old Roman Empire was like Egypt and the area which you know is modern-day Israel and Jordan and Syria. That has sort of been the fringe of the Roman Empire, and beyond it had been others. In the south, though, in the area which you know is modern-day Saudi Arabia, there was some contact with the peoples who lived there. Many of them are Bedouin. They follow their herds through the seasons, and they graze their flocks and are on the edge of Roman Empire and on the edge of other things, but are not fully integrated, but nonetheless were well aware of what the Roman Empire was doing, and then later on the Byzantine. By the time period of about the year 610 or so, in the early part of the 7th century, there is within the Bedouin tradition in the city of Mecca, there is a caravan trader. His name is Muhammad, and he is a well-off merchant, and he is, as a well-off merchant, probably well aware of the caravan route that goes into Cairo, that travels from his area up into Jerusalem and beyond. That if he had been living and working in this area for quite some time with many people who are traveling as businessmen, he's probably very familiar with many of the different kinds of religious beliefs that exist in the people around him. Having business contacts with people who would have been from the Christian traditions or Jewish traditions or various other non-Christian or non-Jewish traditions, sort of labeled pagan as an easy way to label a whole bunch of groups, but that's a difficult thing to do. But nonetheless, a whole bunch of different religious belief systems existed out there. Now, Muhammad is going to start to have a series of visions. Now, if we think about this for a second, think about the story and the idea of, say, what St. Augustine of Hippo had said he had endured. That he had lived a life, had been a normal guy doing his thing, and then he had a big cultural revelation and was converted to his deep abiding belief in Christ and in the idea that he was going to serve Christ. Let's take that idea for a second. And remember, we also have monasticism, where many individuals are going off to the edges of civilization, trying to encounter their God, their understanding of morality and the concept of what they should do with their lives. Muhammad then would fit in with that same context as looking for that next, having a spiritual experience and engaging with the divine. And what he's going to start to do as he does this is when he is out, he's going to start to have a series of visitations and visions. That he is going to now be the sort of, in a context of, say, the Hebrews, the prophet who's going to deliver the good news. Or in the tradition of other religions, remember, many different people are chosen as the messengers. We sometimes call them prophets or other things, but the idea here is that the divine, the deity, the God is going to express ideas and needs through a human who's going to then be the sort of delivery mechanism, the one who will carry on and bring the good news, bring the information to the people who need it. He's going to fit into that tradition, and in the process is going to write down over time in sort of a poetic form the Quran. And you'll see the Quran spelled various ways depending on the textbook you're using, that don't let the spelling get in the way. It is the same thing. And here is a part of a Quran, and I just wanted to have you take a close look at the Arabic script. Because one of the things that's interesting, remember, is when we talked about St. Jerome in one of the last segments, he had to take various Christian documents from multiple languages and translate them into the Vulgate Latin version. That's not going to be an issue so far within Islam, because it is going to be expressed in Arabic script with the idea that it is not to be translated into other languages. Now, one of the reasons to think about why that's a powerful thing is it does two things. If you do want to become part of the movement, if you want to join Islam, if you want to submit, you have to then in the process learn to understand and read Arabic if you want to fully engage, right? That's going to be a way to make sure that everyone's on the same page, literally. And then think about something like the Christian movement, which is going to have things go through translation. And as I had said earlier, other people are going to go back and look at the translation of different languages done by St. Jerome on his Vulgate version of the Bible. And later on in the late Middle Ages, look at places where they could change the translation and alter the meanings and translations of some words. That is not an issue that's going to be a problem for Islam, but it will be for other texts that get translated from language to language. Each time you do that, for many of you who have tried to take a language before, there's not a direct correlation sometimes between vocabularies and ideas. There's some nuances that get missed, and that's going to be avoided in Islam as long as it stays in Arabic and the people who wish to will learn Arabic. Now remember, Muhammad had been a trader, had been a businessman in the city of Mecca. The key of understanding Mecca at the time is that it has within it a large shrine. It is called the Kaaba. All right? It is a local shrine for many people who are religious worshipers. It is also one of the reasons why this city is a key stop on the caravan route, that this is why people go there. And anything, think of it this way, anything that could challenge the centrality of how the Kaaba and Mecca interoperate, anyone who seems to come along and challenge that is probably going to be very unwelcome. So as many people in Mecca are learning about what Muhammad has had through the revelations of the Quran, they're in many ways almost immediately skeptical. Is he talking about creating something new and different? And should he do that, will that undermine and destroy the local religious belief that's already being practiced? Will it threaten the economic viability and the importance of this city? And so Muhammad's message in Mecca is mixed in the sense that he has a mission, he's converted some people to his belief system, he's spreading his ideas, he's gaining followers, but there's also a significant number of people in the city who are very skeptical that maybe his message is going to undermine the importance of the city, and so they're a little bit skeptical. So he is going to be essentially invited off to another city that's a little bit further away because he's not particularly welcome in Mecca. And by the year 622, he has now gone off to a city that eventually is going to be called Medina, which is not too far from Mecca, but is a competing city on the caravan route. And there, Muhammad's message spreads and he gains more adherents, and the deepening of the faith and the spreading of it are becoming much more apparent, while Mecca has not been participating and is falling behind. What's interesting is that within this religious tradition, let's go back a couple of segments here. Remember, take something like the Ka and the Pharaoh in Egypt, right? Unity, one person, physical and mental and spiritual, law, order, and everything wrapped up in one person. All powers in one place. Then say something like, the City of God by St. Augustine of Hippo had made that active case of separating the judicial affairs and the business affairs and family affairs of living with religious ones, almost a split between the state and faith. What Muhammad is talking about is the total fusion, that there's no difference between faith and state, that there's no difference between adherence to the law of religion and the law of the state, that they are increasingly the same thing. There's no grand difference between the two. So that's going to be one of the ways in which early Islam is going to develop. It is going to have this central core idea that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, as expressed through the Quran, and that there is a full unity of everything within church and state, well, not church and state, but between religion and state in this context, and that there will be no grand divisions between the two. As you take a look at this is the Kaaba as it looks today from a modern photograph, right? It is a shrine, it is a place of great reverence, and it is, of course, the focus of the faith in Islam. And what we have here then is fulfillment of the ideas of Muhammad. He had within the Quran created the central 5 pillars. He had taken those ideas, and many of them sound vaguely familiar. The idea, for example, of pilgrimage, the Hajj. That's one of the central pillars of Islam. There's also many other religious groups that have that idea of connecting you back to the origins of your faith. There's also the charge for great charity and alms towards your fellow man. That's also a key element within Islam, but you'll find it within other religious traditions. The idea of daily prayer, again, something central to the Islamic 5 pillars, but also something that is comparable to many other religious faiths. So one of the things that's interesting from a historical perspective is looking as an historian at the development of various religious ideas and concepts across time. It is to look at them not with simply the eyes of someone who is of faith or not of faith, but to take a look at them in the historical context and sit and notice that all these things have to do with human condition. Many of them have some of the same overlapping concepts and precepts. For example, charity, daily prayer, for example, Ramadan within the 5 pillars, the idea of a ritual fast. These are ideas that are very, very common in many practices of people who are within the Jewish and Christian and Islamic communities, right? The Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition shares a significant number of things. They do have different terms, they do have different ways in which they emphasize them, but the interesting thing here is now we have come to the time where at the end of the Roman Empire, the 3 major religious groups that will probably have the most influence over Europe and its continuing history in the next couple of centuries, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, have now all been established. They are now seeking followers and spreading outwards and are working towards a greater and a grander understanding of how they want to integrate their people and integrate others who are not like them. Be sure to cover the early story of how Islam is spread and the life of Muhammad within the text that you're reading, and then see if there are some of those questions in the sample area that can help you address this issue.